in the Word, which is basically a little time in the text and a devotion that goes with us. So as we look forward to our time on the road, this is the beginning of Jesus' journey here on earth, and it begins with a road image. And so from Matthew 2, in the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we have observed his star at its rising, and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over a place where the child was. When they saw the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. We will close today with the Emmaus image at the time when right before Jesus ascends. But we start here, where some of the first people to encounter the Christ start out on a journey and are so affected and so changed by what happens there that they have to go back by a new road. They have to start traveling a different way back. And so that is our hope in youth ministry, that as those youth come along with us on a journey, and as we travel the roads of youth ministry, that we encounter the Christ and are so changed that we need to, so transformed, that we need to travel by a different road. So today, we are going to talk about the road. What's the road going to look like in the Synod Journey? What's the road going to look like for the gathering? But also, what is our faith journey, our road, our travel together in faith look like in youth ministry? Just for a brief moment at your table, will you and the people around you, or you can kind of turn towards somebody? Some people are all by themselves, so you're going to have to kind of yell across the roads or something. But can you name 2 or 3 other road stories that are in the Bible that talk about encountering Christ on the road? Go ahead and do that first. Let's pray. God, I thank you for this day, for this chance to journey together, for the fellow travelers in this space. Remind us that you are with us on this journey, that you travel the roads with us and send us by a new way. Be with us today. Help us to be aware of your presence. Amen. Today's training is going to be broken into a bunch of different sections. And so first of all, Katie is going to walk you through the Youth Ministry Events as Faith Formation Part 3. That's a training for everyone in youth ministry. And then we'll talk a little bit about compassionate justice and how compassionate justice is different from a service event. And then we'll break for a few minutes, come back, and Chad will walk us through the ELCA Youth Gathering details. We'll take a brief break again, and then go through the Synod Journey details, and then wrap up with ascending and commissioning.
All right. We're going to start with just a 30-second review of what we've talked about at the last couple trainings. The first training was a year ago this spring, and at that training we talked about what's the big picture, what's going on with youth, what do they believe, and how does that shape our ministry. And so what the research has showed us is one long fancy word, and that's moralistic therapeutic deism. Most kids, when they articulate their faith, it doesn't sound like Christianity. It sounds like this phrase that the researchers coined. And what that basically means is that young people believe that their faith is all about me. It's all about me and what I believe and what I feel and what I think. It's all about me wanting to be happy and that I should do good things. And while that's a starting point, that's not deep enough to be called Christianity. So as adult leaders, our ministry with young people and our challenge is to share a better story and to share a deeper faith. Because ultimately, our faith is not about us. Our faith is about Jesus. And our faith is about our neighbors. And yes, our faith celebrates in moments of happiness, but our faith is also there comforting us in moments of darkness. Our faith is ultimately about the cross. And so how do we do that? How do we share a better story? How do we share a deeper faith? In our second training in the fall, we talked about being intentional through events, that we share our faith through providing events for young people. We hope that these events are based on the needs of the youth. If you have somebody who's brand new to church, going bowling could be a great thing. If you have people who've been coming for a year and you've been bowling every single Wednesday, they're going to get bored and they're going to walk out. So make sure that every event is based on the needs of your youth. We hope that your events invite adult leaders to walk alongside young people. That is why you're here. That's why we celebrate. We're so glad that you're here with us doing this training. Your role is so important, and we can't tell you that enough. We hope that your events have a purpose, a goal, and an evaluation. What do you want the kids to do? Do you want the kids to just come and have fun? That's great. Did that happen? If it did, your event was successful. Do you want the kids to come and serve? Do you want them to come and learn? Whatever the goal might be, have a goal before the event, and then after the event, look back. Is that what really happened? And so overall, you just want events that will be intentional so that you can share your faith when the young people walk in the door. And so if you missed either of these two trainings, there's fantastic, fantastic information. They are both available online. Check out those websites. Make sure you watch those training webinars. If you're going on the Synod Journey, you have to. So check them out. They're really great. And so we talked big picture about youth ministry. We talked big picture about events. And today's training is all about getting specific. But what do I do as an adult leader? When I've got a kid sitting next to me, when I've got a group sitting in a circle, what do I actually do? When I'm on the bus, when I'm going to the gathering, what do I actually do? And there's a couple ways we're going to answer that question. The first way we're going to answer that question is with the acronym DRAG. And DRAG stands for Do, Reflect, Analyze, Generalize, and Godify. And the point of this acronym is that you can take any activity. You can take freeze tag. You can take squeeze prayer. You can take any activity, and as long as you drag the activity, you'll pull the conversation deeper. And so the D is pretty simple. You just do it. Whatever the activity is, play the game with your kids. Sing the song with your kids. Pray the new way to pray with your kids. Whatever the activity is, you should do it as an adult leader. Don't just sit back and watch. Next, with your group, you're going to reflect. This is an instant replay. What just happened? What did we do? Where were we? How did we do it? Just a quick, bare bones, what were the facts? Next, you're going to analyze. During this activity, did you learn anything new about yourself or about the group? Who were the leaders and how did you feel during that activity? Then you're going to take their reflections, how they felt or what they learned, and you're going to generalize it. How does that activity or idea or feeling relate to your life, either at home or at school or in sports or at church? You're going to generalize those ideas. And then you're going to godify. This is the most important part. This is where we make the faith connection. So you ask questions like, how does this apply to your faith? Does it relate to a Bible story? How can you use what you learned to grow closer to God? So the acronym again, DRAG. Do, reflect, analyze, generalize, and godify. And to help you kind of process it, I'm actually going to give you an activity to drag. I'm going to give you an activity to do, and this activity is called the blind train. So at your tables, whether you have 2 people or 3 people, I want you to hook up and form a train. So you're going to have your hand on the person in front of you's shoulders. And if you're in the back, you get to keep your eyes open. If you are in the front, you need to close your eyes and trust the person who's leading from behind. And so to lead your train, you can tap twice. That'll get the train going. If you need to stop, just tap again, tap twice again, and the train will stop. If you want to go left, tap left. If you want to go right, tap right. Does that make sense? And so, you have about 5 minutes to do the entire drag process. So spend about a minute doing the actual train, and then I'll get you guys to focus again. If you are at the front of the train, I want you to lead the the conversation, walking through that reflection, analyzing, generalizing, and godifying. So you actually physically have to get up and do it.
2 taps.
Well, the reason I focus on wanting to hear your godify examples is because this is the goal of drag. We want to get to this final G. You could spend an hour doing the analyzing or doing the generalizing, but that's not really the point. We want to make a God connection. We want to get to this last example. We want to get to this last question. And so think about this DRAG acronym as you're working with kids, either on a Synod Journey or at the gathering or on a Wednesday night or Sunday morning. You can take any activity, like I said, and you don't even need to know what the godify answers are going to be. Just start the activity, drag it out, and wait to see what the youth make as the God connections. So this is a great way to think about how we do ministry with young people. Another way to think about how we do ministry with young people is to think about hand-holding and finger-pointing. This language comes from Kenda Creasy-Dean, and she has some fantastic books out there if you're looking for resources. But what she says is hand-holding is a ministry of presence, finger-pointing is a ministry of direction. Our goal is to open up a conversation, perhaps pointing out a few things as we listen and participate with you. So a little more specifically, hand-holding is all about participation. And participation is active. Play the games, sing the songs, look silly. Be part of the discussion, but don't dominate the discussion. This is a fine line that we are walking constantly with youth. Learn. Learn with your young people. This is so, so important. You don't need to pretend to know everything. And also, as you're participating, observe. Observe what's going on with youth. Who's talking, who's not talking, who's leading, who's following, who is distracted and left out, and how can you reach out to them? How can you include them? And be ready to share your experiences. Participation is genuine. Be yourself, be awkward, have fun, be positive, even if you're uncomfortable. And participation is complicated because you're playing the game and you're observing the group. You're being yourself, but you're also being the leader. It's complicated, but it's so, so important. It's your role as an adult leader, and you can do it. Another aspect of hand-holding is listening. And when we're listening to a young person, when we're listening to anybody, we want to listen with our whole bodies. Listening starts with the ears, which means if you physically cannot hear the person who's trying to share with you, it's okay to move. If you're in a really loud, crowded room, maybe even at a concert, maybe this isn't the best place to listen. Ask them to move to a different room so you can physically listen with your ears. You also want to listen with your eyes. If your eyes look distracted, the kids are going to think that you're distracted, so make eye contact. For some people, this might be a face-to-face conversation. For some people, face-to-face can be really, really uncomfortable, and they'd rather have a side-by-side conversation. Even if you're sitting next to the person on a bus, you can still lean over and make eye contact and listen with your eyes. Listen with your whole body. What does your body language say about the other person? Does it show that you're caring, that you're concerned, that you're genuinely present? Or does your body language say that you're really late for worship and you already have 15 other things that you need to do? So make sure you're listening with your whole body. And also, we listen with our mouth. This is a little complicated one because listening with your mouth does not mean going on a tangent and telling another random story, because listening is all about the other person. And so we listen with our mouth by asking follow-up questions, by digging deeper. What do you mean by that? And how did you feel about that? And can you tell me more about that? Those are appropriate listening questions to dig in a little deeper. And especially when a tough question comes up that you might not know the answer, a great way is just honor that question and say, that's a really great question. I need to think more about that, and can you give me some time? And then follow up with them if you think more about it, or if you talk to a pastor and suddenly you want to share an insight, to follow up and really honor that question. Not to say that you're going to have the perfect answer, but it's okay to think about something for a while before you get back to them. That's great. And the most important thing is the conversation. Absolutely. Thank you. That's a really good point. How many of you guys are familiar with the WHEAT questions? Okay, good. So some of you are. WHEAT is another acronym. We're kind of heavy on the acronyms today, but that's because we want you to remember these things. WEAT is just a series of questions where you can really listen to the other person. They work great if you've never met them before, if you're talking to a complete stranger, someone that you don't really know. And they are really quickly, the W is for where are you from, where do you live, where do you go to school. H is for hobbies, what you love to do, what you do on your spare time. E is for an event, talking about an event you might have in common. Today you have this spring training in common, so you can ask what brought you to this training today. A is for acquaintances, every Minnesotan's favorite thing. Oh, do you go to East? Well, my cousin goes to East, or my brother's son works it. I mean, just all these different connections to see if you have anybody in common. And T is for travel, a great question, either where do you want to travel or where have you traveled? A great conversation to get somebody talking. As you utilize this WEAT acronym, please know that this is not the be-all and end-all, but these are just questions to get you started. As you're moving in a conversation, you might move from closed questions to open-ended question. Closed question would be, where are you from? There's a simple answer. An open-ended question would be, what's your favorite part about living in Duluth? Or if you had a tourist come visit you, where would you take them in Duluth and why? So open up that question a little bit more. You can also move from informational questions to personal questions. An informational question would be, how many kids do you have? A personal question would be, how did you feel the first time you found out you're going to be a dad? A very personal question. So as we're going to do this WEAT activity with the person next to you, know that you don't have to just stick with the WEAT questions, that you can move into open questions, that you can move into personal questions, because that's what a conversation is really all about. And so we are, at your tables, I want you to have a little conversation. Really practice the listening skills that we just talked about, and also practice asking good questions. So get to know the person sitting by you a little better, partner off.
Because you want them to be with someone that they did not come with, right?
Yes. Okay. Please find someone that you don't know, someone that you didn't come with, and have a conversation. Hopefully you got through most of these questions, if not all these questions. It really depends on the conversation. But as you were talking, Catherine passed out, there's a little yellow card that has the WEAT acronym on one side and the DRAG acronym on the other side. We give you this one so you can keep it with you. You can stick it in your wallet or in your purse and you can reference it at any time. Also, there's a larger piece of paper that goes into more detail about the WEAT acronym and the DRAG acronym. So please take these resources, use these resources, especially when you're driving down to New Orleans. If you're sitting next to someone that you don't know very well, WEAT is a fantastic thing for you to do. When you stop at a rest stop, you can drag an activity and make it a faith conversation. So please take these resources and use these resources in whatever youth ministry looks like in your context. So we talked about hand-holding, which is all about participating and observing and listening. Next we're going to talk about finger-pointing. Finger-pointing starts exactly where we left off, with asking good questions. Good questions like the WEAT questions, or open-ended questions, or personal questions. This is so important when you're ministering with young people. Finger-pointing is also about making observations. I love this example from the curriculum today. I noticed when we were painting the elderly woman's house that you always had a smile on your face. What were you feeling when you were working today? This is a fantastic observation, and it's a fantastic question. And these are the types of things that you should be naming whenever you're working with young people. You should be catch them doing good. Catch them doing something extra special, and make sure you name it. So maybe it's painting an elderly woman's house. Maybe it's, I saw that you went and sat by someone new who was sitting by themselves. What did you guys talk about? What was that experience like for you? Or maybe it's something simple as, hey, I saw you held the door open when somebody had their hands full. Thank you for doing that. Is that something you normally do? So ask questions, make observations, catch your young people doing good. And then finally, the most important part, again, this is like the G in drag. The ultimate goal is to point to Jesus. Where did you experience God today? Where did you see God today? Some people call them God sightings, some people call them God moments, but you want to be able to share these, and you want to be able to challenge your kids to see these things. So if you're going on a trip like the Gathering, maybe the first couple days, you're the one who's naming the God sightings, but hopefully as you lead by example, your kids then will start being able to name where they saw God today. And think of how powerful as we come back from New Orleans, if kids have learned how to do this, and if kids can start doing this in their daily lives or in their weeks at school, if they can start seeing God all around them, then we have really, really done something special here. And so, as you're asking kids, where did you see God today, they're gonna mention things like, well, we're all working together, or we're helping somebody, and those are things that God would want us to do. And then you can challenge them, where do you see Christ in the same way at home, or at school, or at sports, or at work? How can we help people at home? How can we work together at church? Those kinds of questions are going to make it bigger than this one-day event. So this has been a lot of information. We talked about drag, we talked about weed, we talked about hand-holding and finger-pointing. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to walk through some scenarios. Catherine's going to pass them out. And as you look at each scenario, I want you to focus on how can you handhold in this scenario? How can you participate, observe, and listen? How can you finger point in this scenario? How can you ask questions, share observations, and point to Jesus? And how can you drag the scenario? How can you do, reflect, analyze, generalize, and godify? And just for timing's sake, I'm going to have this row, if you guys want to work on scenario 1, if this group wants to work on scenario 2, scenario 3, and if you guys want to tackle scenario 4. If you can, if you get to more than one scenario, that's great, but I want you to start with one of them. All right, I'm going to pull you back to the large group again. Again, we give you these scenarios as a resource. Especially if you have adult leaders who are not able to make it today. We hope that they were able to make it today, but if for some reason they can't, take these scenarios back and walk through with your other adult leaders. What would you do in this situation? This is a great way to learn about the other adults that you'll be working with. A great resource for you guys to have. Another aspect of this youth ministry training that carried on from last spring to this fall to right now again is this whole concept of involving the entire congregation, involving parents, and involving all youth, regardless of if they can participate in a particular event. Because decades of research say that the entire congregation makes a difference in youth ministry, and parents make a difference in their youth. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through really quickly 3 slides that talk about connecting with congregations, connecting with parents, connecting with youth. And as I read through these, I want you to focus on if any of them stand out to you, if any of them inspire you. And then I'm going to send you back to your table groups again, and the goal is to come up with top 3 examples of what you can actually do as you're preparing to go to New Orleans. So really quickly, we can connect with parents by uploading pictures to a church website, providing examples of Bible studies. They might have no idea what you do on a Wednesday night or Sunday morning. Give them an example of what you talk about. Host regular parent meetings and always provide coffee. Utilize the newsletters, bulletin inserts, etc., any written communication that they're used to looking at. You can send emails, host a blog or a journal, send postcards if you're going on a trip, send home service ideas or devotional materials that relate to what their child is doing in church. And for events that are at church, like a regular Wednesday night Bible study, invite parents to participate. Invite them to bring a snack and then encourage them to stay and check it out. Invite them to help plan a big event or fundraisers, things like that. We can connect with the entire congregation in worship. In worship, you have a captive audience. They need to listen to you. And so invite young people to share a sermon, share reflections after an experience. You can show a slideshow, you can do a skit, anything so that the congregation sees the youth as a visible and vital part of the congregation. Again, utilize written communication like the bulletin and newsletter. Post visual images around the church. Print off pictures and make a poster board. If you have a poster from the ELCA Gathering, put it up there so it's a visual reminder of what the kids are doing. Involve congregational members in events similar to parents. Invite them to bring a snack and then invite them to stay. And then also use congregational members as mentors or as prayer partners, either throughout the entire school year or just for a specific event, or both. Especially the prayer partners idea, this is a great idea to involve somebody who maybe doesn't think they have time to do youth ministry, who maybe doesn't know how to do youth ministry. You can always pray and set prayer partners with your young people. And connecting with youth, especially, this becomes critical if you're doing something like the New Orleans trip and some of your youth can't attend. This can turn into a very touchy subject, and so you want to focus on group building both before the event and after event. Utilize things like the DRAG acronym. Do group builders before and after the event. Communicate with them while they're gone, similar to you would communicate with parents. So send them a postcard, or send them an email, or just send them a text and just say, hey, I thought about you today. I hope everything's going well. And when you come back, share stories, share your experience, but do this in a very careful way, because the kids, they want to hear about the experience, but they don't want to feel excluded. And so young people especially are really good at just kind of alluding to, hey, remember when we met that guy? Yeah, I do remember, but I don't think Joey remembers, so can you share with him the whole story? Can you expand and articulate the whole story? And as always, be very careful with the inside jokes, because that can get pretty painful pretty fast. That can get pretty excluding pretty fast. And so maybe you'll need to have a conversation with that one young person who continually brings it up and still thinks it's funny. Maybe it is for people on the trip, but you have to keep in mind the kids who couldn't participate. And so again, at your table groups, the goal is to think of an upcoming event. Maybe you're thinking about New Orleans. How can you connect with parents? How can you connect with the entire congregation? How can you connect with other youth? And my goal is, from each table, I want to hear your top 3 examples, top 3 things that you are actually going to do with this event in mind. Go ahead. All right, I'm going to pull you back to the large group again. Let's hear some examples. How are you planning on connecting with parents, connecting with the church, connecting with youth? What are some things that you're talking about? A couple other ideas that have come out. This is the 3rd time we're doing this training, and so I just wanted to share a couple ideas that other congregations are doing. From our first training, somebody is, they have their the prayer chain for the church communicates via email. And so every day they are sending an agenda that this is what the kids are doing today in New Orleans, so that the entire prayer chain can pray through that agenda each and every day that they're gone. And another church has a mail call. They get the congregation to send mail that every night at family time, they then pass out to the kids. There's a piece of mail for every kid for every day that they're on this trip. And some of it is from children, some of it is from older people in the congregation just writing a card saying, I'm thinking about you today, I'm praying for you today. And they did this at the last gathering, and the kids looked forward to that as the highlight of their day, getting mail from church back home. And then they could see just how many people in the congregation, people that they didn't even know, were connected and caring for them and excited for them on that journey. So, great examples. Thank you for sharing. The last piece that I'm going to talk about is managing your group. When it comes to a big event, what are you going to eat? And where are you going to stay? And how are you going to get there? And what are you going to do about cell phones? And how are you going to keep these kids safe? How are you going to make sure you don't lose anybody? These are all really, really, really important things. But these types of things change based on the context. It really depends on who your group is. It really depends on what you're doing. It really depends on the location. So we're not going to go into that in detail right now, but there is a handout that will help you process. The main point that I want to get across today is that you, as an adult leader, you need to think about these kinds of things. You need to think about head count. You need to think about meals. You need to plan for these things. And if you're going to the gathering and you're going on the journey, we're going to talk more about these managing your group details today. And so I'm just going to pass it on to the next person so we can keep going. Siobhan's now going to talk about compassionate justice.
So compassionate justice. You just heard a little bit, we've been talking a lot about how not to make something just about an event. This piece is really how not to make it just about a service event, but how to really be about compassionate justice, part of a journey of growing in faith. Like I said at one of the first trainings, when I was in seminary, we had to read 2 books in one of my first classes, and one was Kenda's book about a God-bearing life, and it talked about that hand-holding and finger-pointing, and the other book was a habits book, and it had all kinds of program ideas for what to do in youth ministry. And I walked out of that class, and I hated the Kenda book because it didn't give me anything to do. There were no games, there was nothing to kind of program them through, and I loved the other book because it had like a whole year full of Wednesday ideas. 10 years later in ministry, I don't ever use the program book. It's what you just heard in Kenda's piece that really makes the difference in ministry. It's about that hand-holding, that finger-pointing, that ministry of presence, the lifelong faith stuff that happens in every moment that you are with youth that is far more impactful than any kind of game or program you're going to do. Those programs and those games are just tools to get at that real ministry piece. Compassionate justice, same thing. Service events are awesome. You know, it's like I want to know, can we tie blankets? Can we go to the food shop? What are the things that we can do? But compassionate justice is a perspective. It's a way we look at the world differently, and it changes how we live our everyday and even sit next to the person that we're next to. So why compassionate justice? First of all, because there's human need. And that human need can range from the need for companionship and the need for relationship to the need for food or the need for housing. But there's human need. And secondly, because it's a divine mandate. In 1 John 4 it says, the commandment we have from him is this, those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. So I've heard call considered like a cross. That your call in the world is where a passion that you have, a gift that you have, intersects with the world need. And this is where that divine mandate and that human need interact is our call. There are 3 phases of compassionate justice. There's relief, development, and advocacy and justice. You may have seen the clip when you go to the gathering site. It has kind of an introduction to why are we going to New Orleans again. And one of the things that they've really talked about is, yes, we've done a lot of the relief things in the past. We've built a house. We've read to kids. We've done some like replanting. Those were all relief efforts. Now we want to move to a deeper kind of compassionate justice that goes to development and advocacy and justice as well. So in our picture, for example, the relief efforts are things like if somebody's hungry, you give them a fish and it feeds them. Development gets to that next level of you teach them how to fish. You teach them how to get food themselves and help them learn so that it's not just an instant relief effort, it's an ongoing change. And the advocacy and justice piece takes it one further and goes, what's up with the system? How do we work in the level of a system to change it? So maybe in this scenario, it's how do we change fishing practices and environmental practices so that there is always food for everyone? So we want to, in compassionate justice, consider all those things. Compassionate justice versus service learning, it's an intentional process. It's not just a project. So it is everything that you do to prepare and lead up and train before, through the project and into reflecting on it and moving into the next phase. It has a deep, lasting impact. It's not just one neat experience. Yeah, they maybe come home and go, well, it was really fun to tie blankets, but it has a lasting impact that gets to them, where they see that there's something that they really want to be a part of changing. So it's a 4-step process. Compassionate justice always involves 4 steps. One is the preparation. So there's Bible study. There's community building, there's trainings and fundraising, there's learning about the context of where you are maybe going to do some concrete work. There's a sharing of expectations so that everybody understands what it is that this ministry is all about. And then there's a sending and a blessing. For the Journey and the Gathering, we are still in this preparation phase right now of that compassionate justice experience. The second phase is always action. And so it's an orientation to what they're going to be doing and why. So I remember specifically when we went 3 years ago, one of the most powerful pieces for me in the service project piece that we got to do on the journey was that we got to listen to the organizations. So even when we sat down, we were going to clean up garbage in a neighborhood for a day. But before we did that, they sat down and they taught us about the neighborhood and the amount of trash that is in that neighborhood and how it had changed rental and what it had done to that community and their ability to be together and how it had upped to violence. They gave us all this experience, and then they talked about what the organization was doing to change and how much change they'd made in a year. And that orientation made the experience far more than picking up a couple pieces of garbage. So that learning about the community, it's the giving and the receiving blessings in return. So it's our compassionate justice is always, yes, what are you sharing of yourself and your time and your talents, but also what are you receiving as you walk side by side with others? What are the gifts that you have received, just even in how it has changed your perspective or how the presence of the people you are working beside impact your life and your faith? And then it's beginning reflection. So right away, even as you are on the journey or in the midst of an experience, you're reflecting on it, you're godifying it. Then the real step 3 goes not only from the reflection on site, but the reflection following an experience. And that can be done in group reflection. That's what family times are about. It can be individual reflection. Maybe it's giving people time to journal or to just talk one-on-one with another person about what their experience was like and how they were impacted. And then it invites creativity too. What are fun ways to reflect on what your experience is? One of the coolest ways I saw was a congregation that had been a part of service work out in their community, had done these first 3 steps, got back to their congregation, and on the Sunday that they were reflecting on their experience, they put participants in each corner of the sanctuary with big, I can't think what they're called, but the big poster board pieces and markers or paints or different art mediums. And as they shared about their experience, the youth drew and painted and created these artworks that reflected what their experience had been. So how creative can you be in how they reflect what they've experienced? Celebration. Compassionate justice always has an element of we celebrate what this is all about and what is God up to. So for the journey or for the gathering, it's always that welcome home piece. How do you celebrate what you have been up to and what is still going to happen and connect back into your community? A continuing reflection. That reflection should go on for years. You want them to look back 10 years and still reflect on how that experience has changed them. To tell their stories. How are you creating opportunities for them to really share the story of what has happened and what God is up to in their lives and injustice in the world? Give them a chance to evaluate honestly what their experience was and also consider future opportunities. So compassionate justice is a lot more than one thing. It's a 4-step process that is ongoing. All compassionate justice requires tuning in, which is that deep listening that Katie talked about. It involves looking at your gifts and the gifts of your youth and the passions of your youth and helping them connect those with the need in the world. And it's also looking for partners. What organizations, what other congregations, what other people can you partner with to have an even deeper, that ripple effect, to have an even deeper impact, a lasting impact in your community? It's about accompaniment. This is a word you're going to hear a lot on the Journey and the Gathering. It's the walking together in solidarity that practices interdependence and mutuality. This means that we don't treat our neighbors like broken toys that cannot fix themselves. Instead, we treat our neighbors as brothers and sisters who work with us so that we can all live as the people of God created us to be. We ask our neighbors how we can make them stronger and actively listen to their answers. Then we work together with our neighbors to do what they ask of us in the way they want us to help them. We also ask them to help us with our burdens. So it's a sharing, it's a walking together. So we walk side by side, together reconciling with relationships at the core. So it's realizing, when we went on the gathering 3 years ago, there had been a lot of buildup about what the service projects we'd be doing were. And we got there, and our kids, we were asked to go to the place where they make the Mardi Gras floats and to visit with the artists, and they got to take part in creating sections of those floats. And we had talked a lot about this deep listening, this deep accompaniment where we listen to each other's stories. And the artist had been talking, as he'd been creating, about how Mardi Gras is more than a big party, and how people don't understand the rich history, and how people just see New Orleans as a party place with no depth and no deep faith. And he'd been talking about this. And we left, and a couple of our kids were still kind of wondering what it was we were going to do. And then we got out to a park, and we were ordering some food in line, and this woman came up to us, and she said, "You're the Lutherans. Why are you here helping these party people? They don't deserve it." And they haven't done, and just went into this rampage, and you could watch our kids go, this is what it means. It means we've heard the story, and now it's our chance to share it. And so we engaged in this deep conversation, and that's compassionate justice. That's that advocacy piece. That's even it's more than just relief efforts. It's compassionate justice built on relationships. So the posture of an adult leader really matters in compassionate justice. It's Tiger McClune is famous for saying it's not about you, but it's all about you. It's not really about you. It's about what God's up to, but it really matters what you do. And so it's about being an able adult, that your attitude is positive, gracious, that you anticipate opportunities and look for them, that you be aware, be present, be organized, be a problem solver and a partner, that you listen non-judgmentally, that you reflect what it is that you're experiencing, and that you respond to those around you, that you engage in relationships, the activity of the Spirit, the joy that is there, and point out that joy, be a finger partner, be thoughtful. Always thinking, it's a lot of work to be an adult leader because your brain should always be actively engaging. And then be in prayer. And this is the prayer for an able adult. God, help adjust my posture and make me able. And that is where the power lies. Quotes to carry. Prepare your heart and not your stuff. See everything as an opportunity. If it doesn't happen the way I need it to happen, that is okay, because it's not about me. It's about real needs, not my needs. I will practice what is good for the sake of the whole, and stop working, start interacting. These are all resources on compassionate justice. They are also available on the webinar that is posted at the gathering site, and there's a link on the Northeastern Minnesota Synod site. We are going to take a minute and break. Catherine's handed out some handouts for you, and then Katie has made Bananas Foster. So if you would like to help yourself to some Bananas Foster and ice cream and some treats, use the bathrooms or whatever